May 2019, Beijing Capital International Airport. Peter Crosby comes to China again.
I feel good. It's summertime here. It feels great.
Is it working cameraman?
Working cameraman, nice to meet you.
He kindly reminds us about the wire in front of the lens.
Look, you have
Oh,
yeah, maybe not so good in the frame. This bag is 70 pounds.
The largest piece of luggage contains his sports gear from the U.S. This time, Peter will be staying in China for 6 months. He's leased out his condo in New York before setting off.
Somebody took it over last Thursday. I have no home. I have no home. Yes? She's heavy, heavy. Ooh.
Tonight, he will stay in a hotel at a hutong.
谢谢啊，慢坐。你好。
Your reservation is double bedroom and without window.
Without a window? Oh no.
3 nights.
Well, that would be depressing. Can we have a window?
Today we only have a family room. Family room we will discount 400 yuan for 1 night.
So it's 160 more.
130.
Which is $30. No, it's okay. I'll stay without a window. Ta-da!
The next morning, he goes apartment hunting with a real estate agent.
对，走吧，我领你们过去吧，走吧，上来我骑着。
安全吗？安全吗？可能。
很近的。
很近的，附近的，可以。他是谁？
他现在在这儿住的房客，马上就搬走了。
Okay.
The tenant wouldn't let Peter in. He only gets a peek inside the door and can't see much. He decides to try his luck with the next-door neighbor.
I wanted to ask you just questions about your place.
I mean, I'm dressed like this.
Well, I'm dressed like this, so. Wow, 很高兴。
Weird, I mean, 很高兴。
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Hi.
It's like new windows. So I'd like to ask you, if you don't mind, so this is very personal, and you can say, no. How much rent do you pay?
Oh,
You don't have to say.
I think it's really high.
Yeah.
Compared to other places because it's a loft.
Ah, loft is cool.
Yeah, and the furnishing.
Yeah.
Then,
Okay.
再见。
Thank you.
25 years ago, he biked all the way from Beijing to Hong Kong. This year, he plans to hit the route again to see the changes and meet old friends. He also plans to film the journey with his partners and make a documentary for his fellow Americans. Peter invests over $50,000 for this filming trip, but he knows it's not enough.
Again, money. That may not be the answer you want.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's a real answer
Yeah.
to the biggest challenge of this project.
I'm very confident now. Time traveler back in China message is so important and timely that we will get the funding we need.
When Peter arrives in Beijing, another American is also planning on going to China.
Only one building, and that was this building, Mao Hall.
Max Horne, or Hung Ming Wei in Chinese, graduated from Riverdale Country School in New York just the day before.
I still remember the first day when he stepped into this classroom. That was his corner. So he sat there for a long time. And he was not as grown up as he is right now. He is a really cute, adorable, chubby boy who didn't speak any Chinese, by the way.
Li Lu was his Chinese teacher for 6 years. Calligraphy, tea utensils, and other distinctively Chinese deco, everything in this classroom is arranged with her own hands.
So the teachers gave them daily vocabulary quiz every day. At first it was scary because I don't think any other class at Riverdale do that to torture them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was shocking at first. I had never been asked to take an assessment every single time I walked into the classroom, but I think by the end I really appreciated it.
And you look forward to it.
And I look forward to it. So up here, we have my first Chinese project ever. Oh no! So maybe we can put it down on the floor for you to see. So here, this is the Great Wall, Changcheng. And then, I made this out of these little foam bricks that I bought at an art store, and then I glued them together. And then here we have Mongolian nomads. So this is a white tent in Chinese, Menggubao. And horses. And then we have a traditional Chinese garden here with a stream and some rock formations. This is the Chinese people call Dakuchar, the Big Pants building. So it's also the CCTV tower.
As his Chinese improves, he desires to see China himself.
Maybe 3 years? 2 years. Pretty new.
Chinese-American photographer Liu Heung Shing spent most of his life traveling the world and taking pictures.
你在吃什么？好吃吗？
吃张面条。
哦。
你不要把我拍下去干嘛？不要把我拍下来了。要把你拍下去了，很漂亮，你看嘛。
你吃你的。You know, the daily lives tells you so much about how people are and how people live. And it gives you something authentic.
On an April weekend, Liu arrives in Chengdu for the opening ceremony of the Chengdu Contemporary Image Museum. He remembers the first time he came here. It was 40 years ago.
At that time, simply there was no highway. There was only Jinjiang Hotel. And outside Jinjiang Hotel, there's the landmark, gigantic statue of Chairman Mao. Well, the night before, we went to the place, and you see the pace of life is still the same. People sit in the garden and have tea, and people come and, offer the service of cleaning your ear.
That city in his memories now seems quite different, yet unaltered. Liu was born in Hong Kong in 1951 and spent his childhood in Fuzhou. China was poor in the 1960s and 1970s. Over 700 million Chinese lived in poverty. Liu moved from Hong Kong to New York to continue his studies in 1970. A year later, an American made a secret visit to China, which in a certain way changed Liu's life. Henry Kissinger, then President Nixon's national security advisor, visited Beijing in secret on July 9, 1971, paving the way for Nixon's visit to China and the normalization of diplomatic relations between the two countries.
So suddenly, I began to immerse myself in anything and everything about China. I would go to the library, and find these volumes and volumes of Joe Needham's book about science and civilization of China. I basically was in the process of rediscovering myself as well as trying to learn about China.
On February 21, 1972, President Nixon landed in China. He reached out to shake hands with Premier Zhou Enlai. Joe said to him as they drove away, "Mr. President, your hand is stretched across the largest ocean of the world." The China-American Joint Communique, also known as the Shanghai Communique, was published a week later.
President Nixon visited China in 1972. That changed China as much as it also, differently, it changed the United States. It created such an excitement in America. I didn't start to imagine yet that I would one day, pursue a career in photojournalism.
After the flowers start dying, then the leaves come out.
Also caught in this China excitement was Lois Conner.
Oh, the guihua. The guihua is like, it's only, you should put it with other tea. I'll put it with the baichang. They have a lot of Chinese tea here. I'll put it in here.
These stools, the boxes from China you brought?
Yeah, over the years. I've been going for over 30 years. This is very early on. I put it in the luggage.
Put it in the luggage?
And wrapped it with bubble wrap. It was maybe 15, 20 years ago. So they weren't so strict with the airlines,
In her New York apartment, Chinese items are everywhere. There's even these Chinese-style sheets. China resumed its legitimate seat in the UN in 1971. 2 years later, Chinese became one of the UN's working languages. Lois was studying at Pratt Institute in New York at the time and worked as a part-time clerk at the UN.
Sometimes on break, and you could pick up the earphones and listen in whatever language you want to. When somebody takes the podium, they say, "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." Or in Arabic, it's "Shukran Siddaris." That's beautiful, right? Both beautiful. Which one?
Why did you choose?
I chose Chinese.
Why?
Because a language is made up of drawings. Originally, drawings, pictographs. So I felt like that spoke to my artistic side.
She later studied at Yale and coincidentally took a course on Ming Dynasty landscape paintings. As the paintings slowly rolled out, mystic and romantic Chinese charm poured out. She was fascinated immediately.
I didn't know anything about Chinese landscape painting, and all of a sudden, there's this incredible landscape that seemed like Dr. Seuss, something completely imaginary. And I was emboldened to ask, why are they painting like this? And when my professor said, it's a real landscape. And poets and writers and painters have been going to the Li River, Yangshuo Guilin, for, 2,000 years.
Yangshuo Guilin. The names were engraved in her mind. She decided to visit the places in person.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute.
In 1976, Jimmy Carter was elected president. The two countries sped up the normalization of diplomatic relations. In the same year, China was experiencing groundbreaking changes.
The earthquake of Tangshan, the death of Mao, following the death of Zhou Enlai. I was in Paris at the time, actually, when I saw in the Parisian newsstand the full front pages of Mao's portrait. I knew Mao had died.
Liu Heung Shing had graduated from college and was becoming a photojournalist. He received an assignment to photograph Mao's funeral. He flew from Paris to Guangzhou, but couldn't get a train ticket to Beijing. He stopped in Guangzhou. That stop became a new starting point for his career. One of his best-known albums, China After Mao, started right from here.
I came to realize by photographing the ordinary people and observing their body languages, suddenly there seems to be a new pace, a more relaxed pace than I remember in the childhood, than I remember in the Cultural Revolution. People seem more relaxed towards foreigners or visitors like myself, and their more relaxed way of conducting their daily lives, made me felt maybe a new era would soon change China.
In December 1978, China and the U.S. published a joint communique announcing that they would establish formal diplomatic relations on January 1, 1979. 13 days later, Coca-Cola announced it would officially enter the Chinese market, becoming the first foreign company in China since its opening up and reform. This young man in a military coat was trying out a new flavor, and more importantly, a new way of life. It was Liu who took this picture. He was by then the first photojournalist Time magazine stationed in China. Later, he joined the Associated Press, serving as an eye for the Western world, looking at China.
We were told by the official there they want to build a special economic trade zone there. The little Toyota minibus literally stopped off in the rice field. And the official came with rows and rows of charts and saying to us, we want to build the Holiday Inn Hotel here, we want to build McDonald's there. And again, I look at my colleagues, from the Times, from the Washington Post, none of us, from the facial expression, we believe what we were listening.
The place they visited was called Shenzhen. It became China's first special economic zone in 1980. No one would have thought that this little fishing village would one day become a world-class city and be home to great companies like Tencent and Huawei. The opening up and reform policy started in 1978. It fast-tracked China's economic development, and the outside world began influencing average Chinese people more and more. This picture features Dr. Fu Yulong, a Beijing plastic surgeon, and his patient. Double eyelid surgery was just starting to catch on in China.
I couldn't understand why she has already one done and the other one was not done. So she explained to me, said, well, if I have both of my eyes bandaged at the same time, I could not go home on my bicycle. So I have to bike home, so I could only do one at a time.
Students preparing overnight for college entrance exams in Tiananmen Square. Jam sessions by 2 American musicians in a Chinese dormitory. A couple renting half a wedding dress for a photo to save money. A farmer passing under a giant billboard. And young men and women yearning for free relations instead of obeying their parents' orders. Liu recorded all of this from the start of opening up and reform, visualizing the longing for change of the Chinese people.
Chinese were so curious about just everything. There is nothing that they're not curious about.
Curiosity was also captured within this picture. It was a lion dancing celebration and people were taking pictures. Lois's wide camera and foreign face accidentally caught the eyes of other photographers. She pressed the shutter and caught this dramatic moment. In 1984, Lois was granted a scholarship to study in China for 9 months. She chose Yangshui, Guilin, a place she had longed to visit.
And there are a lot of complications, but you know, the language, my language, even though I studied at the UN at my lunchtime, I learned a lot of things. I can say almost every country in the world, but I couldn't order food.
There was something else that made her even more uncomfortable. With almost zero experience of dealing with foreigners, local police had someone accompany Lois out of caution.
Well, I went to Guilin first, 3 young women, 1 for each month, and they were great, and I love and adore them, even still, you know. And so it was helpful for my language, but it was hard for my getting around doing my work.
When China first opened up to welcome foreign faces, there was still doubt and caution. Lois was using a large and heavy full-frame camera. The whole set, including negatives and tripods, weighed over 100 pounds. A blonde girl with such a large machine was a sight to see in a small town.
I was the only foreigner to actually live there. Small townspeople are incredibly friendly. And if you spend any time talking to them, they would invite you for dinner and ask you about what you're doing. And, you know, that's how I made friends.
The visit ended 9 months later. The American girl simply couldn't get over the beauty of the Chinese landscape.
How can I embrace 5,000 years in my short life? And the landscape and the people. I mean, you know, after spending 9 months in China, I came back and I was just like, you know, trying to figure out how to go back again.
Lois returned 2 years later. She met her muse in the Summer Palace in Beijing.
That was the summertime, and so the lotus were blooming. You know, it was June, July that I think that I was studying there. And every day the lotus would start to bloom a little bit more, and I'm like, there's no way I can pass up that. You know, it wasn't really what I thought was part of my subject, but it became my subject.
From Yuan Ming Yuan in Beijing to Westlake in Hangzhou, Lois has a special love for lotuses in China. The flowers are presented with her favorite platinum prints in a refined black and white style, just like traditional Chinese ink wash paintings. During the past 30 years, Lois would come back to China almost each year, even if only to stay for a very few days.
So I've seen my friends' children grow up, and my friends' children have children. A few of my friends have passed away. But I go there, and even if I don't recognize somebody's son or daughter, they go, "康兰丝，你回来了." It's so sweet. It's just like, yeah.
Between the lotuses and the scenery, her love for China lives on.
Sometimes you get snow
Peter also has real Chinese friends. In 1988, Peter came to China for the first time as a freelance writer and photographer for the Los Angeles Times.
It's the first time I went to China, I fell in love with it because it was so wild and beautiful. Because I wanted to be closer to China and telling China stories. And that's when I had the idea about doing the bicycle ride. I wanted to be able to take photographs and video and tell stories in an integrated way. Each one of these is
In 1994, Peter and a friend set out from Beijing and rode all the way through Shanxi, Hubei, Hunan, Guangxi, and Guangdong before finally arriving in Hong Kong, crossing about 3,000 kilometers. The trip was obviously difficult. But the Chinese people in front of his camera were the most lively memories of the experience.
It's amazing to see all those people who let us film and photograph them so up close and very personally.
Peter was most impressed by the family in this picture.
And they lived in a dirt house, literally a dirt house, by the side of a mountain road. And this is, by that time it was like October, and it was starting to get cold, and it was rainy, and anyway, we were lost, and they said, "Come in, have some tea, have a hot potato."
It was during the 4th month of this trip when they got lost in the mountains in Badong, Hubei province. They became hungry, cold, and desperate.
As it got dark, they wanted to make us a meal. So they made us a very special local meal. And they had to borrow the pork from their neighbors. I think they had to borrow the cabbage too from someone else. I think their nephew ran out and got some cabbage. And so, but they cooked over a wood fire and coal fire in their home, and they made us this big feast. Pretty much in the dark, and they let us stay, and the children slept in the parents' bed so that we could sleep in the children's bed.
It could have been much worse, but it turned out to be his best memory. Peter took this family photo before saying goodbye. For the next 23 years, Peter was busy with his work and life without returning to China. But he always remembered that Chinese person who didn't know him, but still offered to help.
And it's a little bit like somebody has it's a gift. I mean, it's a gift. I'm going back to say thank you in my way, in a little way. I've not been here in
More than 2 decades later, he came back to China. Everything changed. Where are the Lius?
Hello, my friend.
This is the daughter of the Liu family.
What was once a small family is much bigger now.
We are lucky people because we are all here.
Like the rainy night 23 years ago, again they sit around a table. And again, they take a family photo. This time, Peter is in it as well. The next day, Peter visits Liu's new house in Beijing town.
Catman! It's amazing how included I'm being, even though my language skills are so bad, and we're using apps on our phones to communicate. 这个名字是什么？
6-character hit.
The children bring a cake. As it turns out, Liu was born only hours before Peter. A happy coincidence.
Okay. Are you worried about getting old?
我不担心，我们是朋友，永远都是朋友。你到时候可以到我这里来，我们在一起住养老，没问题。
You can come to me. I'll live with you.
是这个意思。
没问题，没问题。You are truly the most generous person in China.
The rendezvous with the Liu family in 2017 makes Peter even more determined to repeat the trip from Beijing to Hong Kong.
Hey guys, how you doing? This is 1994.
Oh my God, that's fast. That's going from here to Miami. More. In 25 years, you haven't changed physically too much.
Yeah. How old are you?
I'm like 58.
Okay, I'm 64.
Peter left his bike in this New York bicycle shop before setting off for China.
Yeah, I got to put my bike in storage for 6 months. What I'm trying to do is help Americans understand Chinese people.
Well, that's good.
Stop with the fear, stop with the demonizing. It's like,
We're very ignorant when it comes to...
In China, in the middle of China, there are folks just like you.
I wish I could go to China.
We're late.
I'm not even sure.
What kind of China and Chinese people will Peter see this time?
We're good. That would be a really big story. Be really important for China, for people to be able to see how China's changed.
Also chasing stories is Liu Heung Shing. He left after photographing China at the start of opening up and reform. Liu was assigned to India, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, South Korea, and the Soviet Union as an AP photojournalist. He's witnessed historical moments in the world. In 1991, he caught this iconic moment when Gorbachev throws down his speech after announcing his resignation. This picture won him the Pulitzer Prize. At the height of his career, Liu thought of China again.
As a journalist, I was aware that China would soon be celebrating the 50th anniversary of People's Republic, which would be 1999, 50 years later. But the reform was already, beginning to see noticeable results. It would be a great idea to let all the chairman, CEO of Fortune 500 companies to see the changes in China.
In 1997, Liu put away his camera and became chief representative of Time Warner. 2 years later, he helped organize the Fortune Global Economic Forum in Shanghai. Globally renowned business leaders brainstormed with Chinese officials and entrepreneurs. This became a milestone for Shanghai and for China's opening up and reform as well. Max Horne grew up in the 21st century and witnessed the rise of China.
I think when I first came to China, I realized that perhaps the people are more important than the places, and that's definitely something that I've come to realize. So even though there are such unbelievable things to see, it's the people you meet at each place that make the difference. When my mom first went to the Temple of Heaven on our first trip to China, she saw a bunch of older Chinese women in the park there that were doing square dances and singing. And so the temple was pretty, but what was even more beautiful was the interaction between people, the sense of community, the sense of harmony and togetherness, and that's what matters more, I think.
In 2018, Max came to China again and was on a trip from Beijing to Guangzhou. Unfortunately, he missed his train and had to buy a ticket on the spot. He only got a standing ticket for his 18-hour night trip.
On the train, I WeChatted Miss Lee. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, travel has its enjoyable elements, it also has its less enjoyable elements, but you'll get through this." And then a few hours later, Miss Lee said, she sent me screenshots of the app Ele.me, Are You Hungry? And so she sent me a bunch of food and she said, "Oh, what do you want? I'll come to the train station to meet you."
Li Lu was spending her summer holidays in her hometown of Xi'an. The train from Beijing to Guangzhou would stop there for 5 minutes.
So the train went by her home city of Xi'an at 3:30 in the morning. So it was really the middle of the night. The train station was completely empty, and the train only stopped for 5 minutes. But when it stopped, she was standing on the platform. She had KFC and a big hug for me, and I think that was one of the most unbelievable moments of my entire life.
That was a magical moment for me too. Yeah, just to see him merging from the crowds in the middle of the night. And knowing how committed and crazy he is. And all his engagement with China.
Max is most fascinated by the ethnic charm of Yunnan, Qinghai, Tibet, and Sichuan. He's amazed at the diversity and acceptance he sees and feels in China. This summer in 2019, Max came to Qinghai for the third time to visit his old friend, Hangdan Jia.
在纽约、北京、西宁，然后他来了，他跟朋友一起来西宁接我，路上很开心，然后听音乐，我觉得就故意的开得慢吧。这有一个我很喜欢的藏歌，然后他跟我一起唱。松达雷姆索，拉萨诺布林嘎索呀拉，诺布明东马拉索。
Max met the boy from his homestay family when he was on a summer camp trip in Qinghai 3 years ago.
该上去，我们老人都上去。爷爷，你爷爷上不去。爷爷的这什么也不是，太轻松。太轻松了，哇塞！那这对你来说是一个训练，是一个训练。好吧，是。 哦，会，没事，你那个，好，可以了。别去吗？这边好。哎呦，我走错了，哈。会，有点害怕。哦，对，别看。会。 哦，对，不是，我不太会。哎呦！
The two of them finally arrived at the top to meet up with a few others.
可以吗？就这样吧，来吧。
This is an environmental protection project the villagers are taking part in. They come up and plant trees. They set out small squares on the ground, mark the lines with hay, and sow the seeds along them.
要深一点了。那这些都是刚种的吗？
嗯，就是今年都是今年种的。今年的话，这边的话大概是4000多亩吧。
4000多亩。啊。
The seeds will soon grow to small plants about 1 meter high. They will join together to protect the little trees in the center. From afar, such squares can be seen all over the hills. After planting the trees, the two hurry downhill. Today is an important festival for local Tibetans. Max is more or less a celebrity in the village.
This is better than usual. Usually even more. Yeah.
Oh,
the picture.
So you just stood there and people just.
Oh yeah, I've had it like I've been standing there for like an hour.
Did they talk to you?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes hard to have a conversation. Nanjak can speak Chinese, whereas his mom only Tibetan. So, for example, when I have to communicate with his mom, like I want to thank her for something, I just like give her a little heart or something.
Each time Max comes, Hang Danjia's mother sets out a table of food.
Also, at the beginning, I was concerned, like, oh, can I eat this? Can I drink this water? But, I mean, everything's completely clean. Like, the amount of food that they've provided here. In a big city like New York, like, no one has time to put out this kind of spread every time a guest comes to their house. But here, I think the standard for how people interact with each other is extremely high.
But Max has a little secret. Sometimes when his mother calls, he makes excuses, saying the signal is bad to avoid talking about unpleasant encounters so that his mother doesn't worry about him.
I think there's like a wall that sometimes we put up when we travel that kind of separates us from the people that we're with at the time. So whether it's bringing bottled water instead of drinking the local water, or taking an air-conditioned tour bus instead of a local car, or finding a local driver. I think those things, when I first came, I had more of those things that I was sort of always putting between me and them, unintentionally, completely unintentionally. And then now, the more time I spend here, one by one, they sort of fall away. And then you can build a real friendship in their place.
Without walls, all that's left between Max and Hang Danjia is the blue sky, white clouds, grasslands, and the herd.
就这样。而且，我不会吹那个。
Lois Conner was invited to be a short-term lecturer at the China Academy of Arts in Hangzhou this October. Last year, after her mother passed away, she spent a whole month at Westlake taking pictures of lotuses.
She loved my lotus pictures, and so I wanted just to go for a month to photograph lotus.
She conveyed her deepest love and memories of her mom in these pictures, and she wrote on the box, "For Mom, Hangzhou." This city is now a part of her life. In Shanghai, a photography exhibition named Summer of Love opened at the Shanghai Center of Photography. Liu Heung Shing found this place in 2015. After traveling the world and capturing key moments in the last quarter of the 20th century, he had returned and settled in China.
I firmly feel, people have more in common than there are differences, because what Chinese people aspire are also something aspired by the American.
In Beijing, Peter Crosby is busy planning his bicycle trip. learning Chinese,
Really worked hard.
improving his fitness, setting the course, and looking for sponsorships for his filming plans.
I think it's so important right now that Americans understand more about China's people. Not China, 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 and trade wars and South China Sea, not all the issues, but Chinese people, Chinese history, Chinese geography. And so same thing for Chinese people. I would like to be a representative of open-hearted, warm Americans so that they can see maybe a better side of Americans.
In Boston, Max is now a freshman at Harvard University. He says he plans to major in Eastern Asia and Chinese culture. He's heard people around him talk about China. He understands some will have their worries and wariness about this country, but he has his own opinions.
So visiting China in person was completely different from what I saw in the books. I think that when you go to China, the one thing China always does is it makes you ask more questions, and I think that's the most beautiful thing.
What was China like? What will it be like? Who are the Chinese people? Who are the American people? And who are we together?